The first time I spotted her, she was standing at the edge of my land like she owned the place, hands on her hips, visor tilted back, and lips pursed so tight I thought she might swallow her own face. That was Jeline Everly, president of the Spring Pines HOA. The kind of woman who looked like she could file a noise complaint just from hearing a squirrel sneeze. I'm Quentin Granger. I'm a mechanic by trade, but I'd finally saved up enough to buy 20 wooded acres just outside city limits, land that came with full hunting rights. No HOA nonsense, no neighbors breathing down my neck. Just me, the trees, and the occasional deer. It was perfect. Then I built the deer stand. I'd set it up on the western edge, a good 20 yards inside my property line, right where the terrain dipped into a little hollow. Took me a full weekend, but it turned out solid, sturdy ladder, camo paint, even a waterproof seat. I was proud of it. That's when Jeline showed up. "Excuse me," she called, marching over like she was storming the beaches. "What do you think you're doing?" I wiped the sweat off my brow. "Building a deer stand on my land. This area is governed by the Spring Pines HOA," she snapped, waving a manila folder like it was a badge. "Hunting structures are strictly prohibited." I leaned on the post I'd just sunk. "Yeah, well, this isn't Spring Pines." I checked the boundaries before I bought it. "This here is unincorporated county land, not under your HOA. She blinked like I'd spoken Latin. "That can't be right." "Sure is. County records don't lie. I even had a lawyer confirm it before I signed anything." She sniffed and pulled out her phone. "Well, I'll be escalating this to the board. It's not appropriate to have a hunting tower so close to our community. It creates a threatening atmosphere." I raised an eyebrow. "The only thing this tower threatens is the local deer population." She didn't laugh. Just turned on her heel and stomped off like she expected trees to part for her. I figured that'd be the end of it. I figured wrong. 2 days later, I came back from a supply run to find a bright orange sticker slapped across the deer stand. "Notice of violation, structure not approved by HOA." I stared at it, dumbfounded. Then I noticed the small print at the bottom. "Failure to remove will result in daily fines." I laughed out loud. Then I took a picture and emailed it to my lawyer. The next morning, I woke up to find Jeline in my driveway, arms crossed and flanked by 2 HOA board members, one of them holding a clipboard like it was a nuclear launch code. Jeline didn't even let me speak. "We've voted. If you don't take it down by Friday, we'll begin issuing fines and may pursue legal action." I folded my arms. "Fines? Legal action? For a deer stand on land you don't control," she glared. "You're within view of our property. That makes it our concern." I stepped closer. "Let me say this real clear. You don't own this land. You don't govern it. You have no authority here." Her nostrils flared. "We'll see about that." Then they left. I watched them walk away like a trio of entitled mall cops. I didn't know it yet, but Jeline wasn't just bluffing. She was planning something bigger, something illegal. HOA story HOA stories Homeowners Association stories 2 mornings after their little driveway ambush, I got a call from the county zoning office. A woman named Patris, polite but clearly annoyed, told me she'd received a complaint about an unauthorized structure and a potential hunting hazard near a residential zone. I asked her who filed it. She sighed. "Spring Pines Homeowners Association." "They sent maps, photos, even claimed your deer stand was erected without a permit." I had to laugh. "That land's zoned agricultural residential. I don't need a permit for a deer stand unless it's over 35 feet tall or has plumbing." "I know," Patris said. "But when HOAs call, we're required to investigate, even if it's nonsense." She scheduled a visit for the next morning. I agreed, mostly because I wanted her to see firsthand what kind of trouble Jeline was stirring up. Patris showed up at sunrise, clipboard in hand, boots caked in red clay. She measured the tower, took some photos, and within 15 minutes said exactly what I expected. "There's nothing wrong with this. It's well inside your property, below the height limit, no utilities, no violations. This is a textbook legal hunting structure." I thanked her. She hesitated before she left. "I gotta ask, she said. Why does that HOA care this much about a deer stand they don't even have jurisdiction over? I looked out across the trees. Because they're not used to hearing the word no, she nodded slowly. Well, they're wasting tax dollars sending us out here. If they pull this again, I'll file a formal complaint with the county commission. It should have ended there, but it didn't. The next curveball came 3 days later. I pulled into my gravel driveway after a long shift at the garage and found a strange sign hammered into the ditch by my fence line. Notice: proposed rezoning hearing parcel 47B petitioned by Spring Pines HOA date, July 9th. I stared at it, stunned. They were trying to rezone my property. I drove straight to the county office the next morning. The clerk behind the counter pulled up the file and handed me a copy of the petition. Sure enough, there was Jolene's name at the bottom, along with signatures from 5 other board members. They were requesting my land be absorbed into the Spring Pines HOA boundary under a protective zoning overlay, claiming it was necessary to preserve community aesthetics and safety. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They can't do this, I said. The clerk leaned in, lowering her voice. They shouldn't be able to, but if they get enough support at the hearing, the Planning Commission might consider it. I left with a folder full of paperwork and a storm brewing in my chest. On the drive home, I passed 2 freshly posted signs along the road leading to my property. Both were marked with the same hearing notice, both placed right outside the Spring Pines entrance like they were already claiming my land. That night, I called my buddy Logan. He used to work for the county attorney's office, now ran his own legal practice in town. When I told him what was going on, he didn't waste time. They're trying to force an annexation, he said. It's rare, but if they can convince the commission it's in the public interest, they might succeed. I ran a hand through my hair. What kind of public interest? Safety, order. Property values, they'll say anything. But the truth is, they want control. They want to shut down your deer stand and make an example out of you. Logan agreed to represent me pro bono. Said it reminded him of a case he worked years ago where an HOA tried to seize a homeowner's wind turbine off grid property. That one ended in a class action lawsuit and a revoked charter. We started gathering evidence. I pulled records from the county GIS office showing the boundary lines. Logan submitted formal opposition documents to the Planning Commission. We even got statements from 2 neighbors outside the HOA who supported my position, one of them, a retired wildlife officer who testified that the deer stand was standard practice for the area and posed no safety threat. Then, just when it seemed we were gaining ground, the real bomb dropped. Sheriff's deputies showed up at my door with a search warrant. The warrant cited suspected unlicensed firearms modifications and hazardous hunting materials stored on the premises. I stared at the officer holding the paper. Where the hell is this coming from? He looked uncomfortable. Anonymous tip. We have to follow up. They searched my house, my shed, and the deer stand. Found nothing. No illegal weapons, no explosives, nothing remotely unlawful. I kept everything above board registered firearms, locked storage safety documentation in a binder. As the last deputy stepped off the porch, he turned back. I don't know who you pissed off, but they're pulling strings. The warrant had been pushed through too fast. Logan dug around and discovered the tip had come from a prepaid phone number registered under a fake name. The call had been routed through a third-party service, but the timing aligned perfectly with the HOA's rezoning petition. We sent a formal complaint to the sheriff's office and submitted a motion to have the source of the warrant investigated for fraud. Logan also filed an injunction with the circuit court to block the rezoning attempt until the case around the false tip was resolved. Word started to spread. Local hunters, farmers, and landowners began showing up at the commission office to voice their support. One man, a war veteran who lived 2 miles down the road, stood up during a public comment session and said, "If they can do this to him, what's stopping them from coming for the rest of us?" Meanwhile, Jolene doubled down. She started sending glossy flyers to residents titled "Protect Spring Pines from Encroaching Dangers," with a photo of my deer stand edited to look like it was looming over a playground. At the bottom, in bold red letters, was the phrase, "Attend the hearing." Say no to hunting towers. One of the HOA residents slipped me a copy. "They're making you out like some kind of militia nut," he said. "Even put your name on it." That crossed the line. We filed a defamation suit. Logan printed out every flyer, every email, every image doctored to mislead the public. He compiled it into a thick binder labeled "Exhibit a Libel by HOA." The court date for the rezoning hearing arrived. The county meeting room was packed. Half the room wore collared shirts and HOA name tags. The other half wore camo hats and work boots. I stood in the back, arms folded, while Logan spoke on my behalf. He laid out the facts. My property was legally zoned outside HOA jurisdiction, and the deer stand was compliant with all county codes. He presented the fraudulent warrant. He showed the flyers and the doctored images. He gave them the sheriff's signed letter admitting no wrongdoing was found during the search. Then he lowered the boom. We also have reason to believe this HOA president knowingly submitted false testimony to initiate a rezone for the purpose of property control, a violation of both state planning law and federal civil rights protections regarding land ownership. The room went silent. Jeline tried to speak. Our intent was only to safeguard, but the commission chair cut her off. "You filed a rezoning petition under false pretenses and used county resources to harass a legal landowner. That's not safeguarding. That's abuse of process." The petition was denied on the spot. By the end of the week, the County Ethics Committee opened a formal investigation into the Spring Pines HOA. Logan filed a separate motion to have their charter reviewed for violations of nonprofit governance laws. The sheriff's office launched a probe into the fraudulent tip that led to the search warrant. And Jeline? Well, she stopped showing up in public. Her name quietly disappeared from the HOA's website. A few residents said she stepped down to focus on family. But I heard from someone on the board that she was under investigation for filing false documents with a government body. The deer stands still there, strong as ever. I added a solar panel that powers a little floodlight underneath it, just enough to keep it visible at night. A reminder, not just of the deer I'll spot from that perch come fall, but of what happens when someone tries to take what doesn't belong to them. And finds out the hard way that some folks don't scare easy. 3 weeks after the rezoning petition was crushed, I was starting to believe things might finally quiet down. The flyers stopped, the threatening mail vanished, and I hadn't seen a single board member near my fence line. I figured Jeline and her crew had tucked their tails and moved on. That illusion shattered the morning I found survey flags peppering my eastern property line, new ones bright blue and pink, driven deep into the soil like someone was claiming territory. A thin plastic ribbon ran between them, sectioning off nearly half an acre just inside my tree line. I followed it for about 50 yards before finding a laminated sign nailed to a sapling. Future site: Spring Pines Greenway Extension Community Nature Trail and Wildlife Observation Deck. It bore the HOA's logo, the name of a local landscape firm, and this part made my jaw clench. The phrase "approved by municipal easement request." I drove straight to the county recorder's office. The clerk, a lanky guy named Seth with thick glasses and a permanent coffee stain on his collar, spent 20 minutes combing through records before shoving his rolling chair back and shaking his head. "There's no easement request filed, not through us, not through planning. Not through Public Works, that sign is bogus." I snapped a photo of the sign and emailed it to Logan. He called me 2 hours later with his voice low and serious. "They forged a municipal easement notice. That's criminal fraud." He filed a notice with the district court that afternoon. By the end of the week, a sheriff's investigator named Deputy Havorson was walking my property line with me, taking photos and collecting the fake survey markers. "Any idea who placed them?" he asked, crouching to examine a stake with a barcode sticker. "No, but I've got a trail cam about 30 feet up that tree," I said, pointing. "It's motion-activated night vision." The deputy looked up at the pine, then back at me. "You're smarter than most of the folks I deal with." The footage showed two men in high-vis vests and spring pines polos hammering in the stakes just after midnight 3 nights earlier. One of them carried a rolled-up blueprint. The other was clearly tossing beer cans into the underbrush when he thought the camera couldn't see. I sent the footage to Logan. He forwarded it to the sheriff's office and the county attorney. Within 72 hours, a warrant was issued for unauthorized land entry and fraudulent misrepresentation of county authority. The two men were HOA board members, one of them, the treasurer. Word spread fast. By the end of the month, Sheriff Holcomb held a press conference confirming that the HOA had engaged in unlawful activities involving forged legal documents and unauthorized land development efforts. Several board members resigned overnight, including Jolene's vice president and the treasurer's wife, who'd apparently been managing the landscaping contracts. But Jolene, she didn't resign, she dug in. At a closed-door HOA meeting, she appointed herself interim compliance director, a made-up title that gave her unilateral authority to respond to external threats. No vote, no discussion, just a memo mailed out to every resident. I saw a copy when a neighbor, a nurse named Mallory who lived just outside the HOA boundary, dropped it off at my place. "I've got 2 kids," she said. "I don't want someone like this making decisions about what goes near my backyard." I asked her if she'd be willing to speak at the next county commission meeting. She didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely. Someone has to say it loud." Logan and I started organizing. We put together a panel of residents from outside the HOA: teachers, veterans, a retired biologist, even a former city planner, folks who had no stake in my deer stand but were tired of watching unelected zealots try to rule the countryside through sheer arrogance. Then came the fire. I was in the middle of rebuilding the roof on my equipment shed when I heard the popping. Not loud enough to be gunshots, more like plastic cracking. I ran around the back and saw thick gray smoke rising through the trees. The deer stand was burning. I sprinted through the brush, boots pounding dirt. By the time I reached it, the lower ladder had already collapsed into glowing embers. The platform above was a skeleton of blackened boards. The smell charcoal, sap, and something chemical hit hard. I called the fire department, then stood back and filmed the last of it collapse. I didn't even feel angry yet, just cold, like something had shifted. The arson investigator found accelerant traces, specifically remnants of tiki torch fuel. Not something you'd find in the woods by accident. 2 days later, a neighbor's security camera caught a shadowy figure walking along the tree line near my property around 2 in the morning. The shape was hard to identify, but the gait was distinct: short stride, slight limp in the left leg. Jolene had a limp, old tennis injury. She bragged about it during a community 4th of July event last year, how she played through the pain during a doubles match. The sheriff's office brought her in. No arrest yet, but they seized her phone and searched her car. Inside the trunk, a half-empty can of citronella torch fuel and a box of matches from a local barbecue joint about 12 miles out. It wasn't enough to charge her, not yet, but it was enough to put her under surveillance. Meanwhile, Logan and I filed a civil suit: trespassing, fraud, property damage, harassment, defamation, illegal surveillance. We even included an environmental claim for the damage caused by the fire, citing local conservation statutes. The county commission requested a full audit of Spring Pines' financials. What they found cracked everything open: dozens of invoices to fake companies, landscaping contracts that paid triple the market rate, community safety payments that were really reimbursements for private travel. Jolene had been funneling HOA funds into shell companies registered under her cousin's name. The HOA was hemorrhaging money, and residents had no idea. Their monthly dues had quietly increased over the last 2 years with no visible improvements. No new amenities, no road repairs, just more rules and thicker newsletters. The residents revolted. At a special session, over 100 of them voted to dissolve the current board pending the results of a financial misconduct investigation. A temporary oversight panel was appointed, made up of neutral third parties from the county's Community Development Office. Jolene didn't show up. She was officially charged with 3 counts of felony fraud, 1 count of criminal trespassing, and 1 count of filing a false public notice, a charge that hadn't been used in the county for over 20 years. The day they came to take her in, she tried to run, didn't get far. She made it as far as the back gate of her property before Deputy Havorson tackled her into a patch of ornamental grass. They hauled her off in cuffs while a small crowd of residents watched in stunned silence. I rebuilt the deer stand, this time with reinforced steel brackets and a fresh coat of blaze orange just for visibility. I didn't bother hiding it. No more pretending I needed to keep things subtle. The new HOA Oversight Committee sent me a letter a week later, a formal apology, signed by every member, with a $2,000 check enclosed to contribute toward reconstruction, and acknowledge the wrongful actions taken by the previous board. I donated the check to the local volunteer fire department. They were the ones who stopped the blaze from spreading into the forest. The land's quiet now. The kind of quiet I bought it for in the first place. No strange signs, no orange stickers, no midnight survey crews. Just the wind through the trees and the occasional click of my trail cam still up there, still watching. Just in case, because some people don't stop until they're stopped, but when they are, it's permanent. It was early fall when the court date for the civil suit landed. The leaves had just started to turn, and the frost came in light patches across the edges of the field. I'd spent most of the morning stacking firewood, trying to think about anything but the legal gauntlet waiting downtown. I had no idea how long it would take, but I told Logan I'd see it through every deposition, every hearing. I wasn't just doing this for myself anymore. By then, the story had reached the state news. A local station did a short piece that aired one evening, featuring drone footage of my land, a blurry clip of the burned deer stand, and an interview with one of the former HOA residents who'd resigned after learning where their dues had really gone. After that, things picked up speed. We walked into the courthouse that morning with boxes of documentation. Logan had compiled everything in color-coded binders with tabs so precise you'd think he was prepping for a Senate hearing. I carried the one labeled fraudulent easement and financial misconduct supporting exhibits, and when I placed it on the defense table, the opposing attorney, a stiff man with a pinched nose and a trembling left hand, looked at it like it might bite him. The courtroom was nearly full. A few reporters sat in the back, quietly jotting down notes. There were 3 former HOA residents who'd filed complaints of their own, sitting shoulder to shoulder and whispering to each other. Even Sheriff Holcomb showed up in full uniform, sitting in the gallery with arms folded and his badge catching the overhead lights. Jolene wasn't present. Legally, she didn't have to be not for a civil proceeding, but her absence said more than her presence would have. According to her attorney, she was undergoing medical treatment for stress-related complications. The judge didn't comment. Logan opened with a timeline of events, laying out the sequence of forged documents, unauthorized land entry, and misuse of public services. He presented the falsified trail project, the fraudulent easement notice, and the surveillance footage of board members trespassing with survey tools. Each piece was entered into evidence without objection. The opposing counsel didn't even try to dismiss them. Then came the financial records. Logan didn't just explain the shell companies he tracked the paper trail, showing bank transfers that went from the HOA's accounts into entities registered at P.O. boxes in other counties. One of them was supposedly a community beautification vendor, that had billed over $40,000 for non-existent landscaping along the HOA's eastern boundary. A forensic accountant took the stand next. He testified that over 70% of the HOA's discretionary budget for the last fiscal year had been funneled into 3 companies, all of which were linked by family or business association to Jolene Everly. He stated clearly that the pattern indicated deliberate laundering of association funds for personal enrichment. The judge asked only one question. "Have criminal referrals been made?" The accountant nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." To the district attorney's office and the state controller. "We rested our case before lunch. The defense didn't even call a witness. Instead, they requested a recess to review options for settlement." It was a polite way of saying they had nothing. The judge granted a 15-minute break. Logan leaned over the table and whispered, "They're about to fold. Don't be surprised if they offer a check just to make this stop." I shook my head. "It's not about money," he nodded once. "Then let's make sure the record reflects why we're here." When court resumed, the defense offered a settlement. They proposed a lump sum payment and a formal HOA apology, along with a full release of liability for the new oversight board. Logan stood, buttoned his jacket, and said, "Respectfully, we decline." The courtroom buzzed. He turned back to the judge. "We're not here for compensation. We're here to establish precedent." This HOA attempted to seize control of land they did not own, falsified government documents, and used public resources to harass and intimidate a legal landowner. We are asking for permanent injunctive relief, the dissolution of the current HOA charter, and a court-appointed trustee to oversee the organization pending criminal investigation. The judge didn't hesitate. Granted. He signed the order that afternoon. The HOA was stripped of its authority, pending a full audit and re-registration under the supervision of a third-party trustee appointed by the county. All prior board members were barred from holding any position of influence in the organization for a minimum of 10 years. Outside the courthouse, the reporters swarmed us. I didn't say much, just held up the ruling and said, "This is what happens when you push too far." That was all they needed. By the end of the week, the district attorney announced indictments. Jolene was charged with 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of criminal conspiracy, and 1 count of attempted land seizure under false pretense. Her arraignment was scheduled for early winter, and bail was denied due to flight risk. She was already under investigation by the IRS for undeclared income. The 2 board members caught planting the survey flags took deals probation, restitution, and community service. They were required to make public apologies at a community meeting, which they did in stammered voices while facing a room full of furious neighbors. One of them choked up halfway through and had to sit down. The county commission voted to implement new rules for any HOA operating within its borders. Clear boundaries had to be filed with the planning office. Financial records had to be made available to all homeowners quarterly. And any attempt to rezone external property without owner consent would result in automatic denial and potential criminal referral. For the first time in years, folks out here started attending those meetings regularly. Mallory, the nurse who dropped off the fake memo months earlier, was elected to the new community council that formed in Spring Pines after the old HOA collapsed. She sent me a handwritten note thanking me for standing firm and included a photo her daughter had taken of a doe crossing the trail near my rebuilt stand. I framed it. The stand itself was better than ever. Reinforced crossbeams, rust-proof fasteners, and a thermal blind that kept me warm even during the late-season hunts. I added a small brass plaque to the inside of the platform. It read, "Private property, no trespassing. No exceptions." A few months later, I got a letter from the State Landowners Association inviting me to speak at their annual conference. I declined, but I sent them a copy of the court ruling and a summary of the county's new regulations. They said they'd use it as a model for other rural communities facing similar HOA overreach. I didn't need a spotlight. I just wanted peace. Now, when I climb into that stand, I don't look over my shoulder anymore. There's no fear of strange vehicles parked at the edge of the tree line, no worry about someone hammering signs into my land in the dead of night. The woods are mine again. Quiet, steady, and honest. And if anyone ever tries to take that away, they'll find out just like Jeline did, some fences don't need to be built with boards and nails. They're built with resolve. And mine isn't going anywhere.